Welcome to Talking Business and Life with Claudio Relsano and Steve Mancini. Claudio and Steve will share their business and life experience to help you grow your business and improve your life. Here's Claudio and Steve.
Good evening and welcome to Talking Business Life. I am your co-host, Steve Stefano Mancini. As always, I'm joined by my fellow comrade, Claudio. Take it away.
Hello, Steve. What's going on?
I wanted to, you know what's funny is I'm used to, look, we did the Italian Impact for so long. I can't lie. It's muscle memory now. And I'm like, good evening. And I'm like, dang nabbit. First of all, it might not be evening. Second of all, you know.
And we usually have Italian, even though we were kind of not getting away, but kind of getting away from just doing that topic. We've had nothing but Italians on, except for our guest today anyway.
I'm just disgusted at tonight.
Maybe he's a little Italian.
By the way, real quickly, just to show you, a fun fact, you know how long back that good evening goes? That's when we were on the radio. So that was years. I mean, that's now you realize that's almost 3 years ago now. And I know it's like, but back in my day, 3 years ago, back in the summer of 23, you know, it's like I could do like the old man. But yeah, it's been 3 years since we were on the radio.
You know, I'm trying to get another guest on, and they asked how many shows we've done. How many shows have we done?
We're up to, I want to say over 130.
I said over 100.
Now I'll tell you what though, but that's a good point because Ray just nodded to me through the window. That's so distracting, right? No, but you know what's funny? Because we were doing Talking Business and Life and the Italian Impact separately. So the truth is we've easily done 150 shows, easily. But Talking Business Life, the old shows are gone because we got off the platform and all that stuff. But the Italian Impact, we're kind of doing it under that banner, but we're talking business and life. And
crazy thing is, it seems like we've done only 10. You know, but we've done a lot.
Time flies, man. Time flies. All right, Claudio, you know this crazy guest of ours. I don't know anything about this.
He's a good man. I've been fortunate enough to be on his show called The Next Interview, and he's a leadership coach. And again, he hosts a show called The Next Interview, and he's a great guy. And he asks a lot of great questions. And really, for me anyway, the person doing the interviewing has to pull things out of the guest. Hopefully we do that today. And he certainly did that with me, and I really enjoyed it. And that's Mr. Doland White. Doland, thank you so much for being on our show.
Claudio, it's good to be here. Steve, it's good to be here with you guys, with both you guys too. Even though I'm not Italian.
Nobody's perfect, but go ahead.
I know. But I am married.
I was going to say, that's right. Your wife's Italian.
All right. She recovered you. You're very good with that.
Yeah. She grew up in Al Capone's neighborhood, so I don't know if we could get any more Italian than my wife.
There you go. You know what? Right off the bat, tell us a little bit about your background. Tell us how you got from where you were to where you are today as a leadership coach and a podcaster.
Well, this is I'll do the short story. So I have been at this for a long time. I was in the software industry for about 32 years. And in that industry, they started off as an engineer. And it's funny, Claudio, because it was the typical dishwasher who became the chef. They kind of said, hey, you're pretty good at that. So why don't we just start giving you people? And so I started leading teams, and we were doing just crazy stuff with computers and software back in those days, with duct tape and coat hangers, making things talk that shouldn't be talking. And grew up doing that. Went all over the world. As part of it, I learned that when you're working with a bunch of engineers, not only do you need to teach them like how to dress, like what to wear, but you also need to work with them on professionalism and communication and like how to conduct a conversation. So I started doing that, went from that and went through the ranks, grew into vice president, and got invited to go be a chief technical officer for a marketing company. And after about 90 days of being there, I knew nothing about marketing, by the way. I was always a sales engineer dude. And got there after about 90 days. They said, we're tired of you complaining. Why don't you just run it? And so I became CEO of the marketing company and ran it relatively successfully. We tripled its size in about a 4 and a 5 year period. Then went on to be a chief operating officer for a $70 million company. Then in April of 2024, at the ripe age of 70, I said, that's enough. and retired.
Wait, you're
And
70?
yeah, I'm 72.
I would have never guessed that.
I'm actually
I
72.
would never guess that.
And
Oh, I thought he was older. No, I'm just kidding.
Maybe you should. Maybe he should have been on the cover of my book. That's an inside joke.
yeah, but yeah, exactly right. It's why I attribute it to good wine, good red wine.
There you go.
But that helps. But no, and as part of it, I had always coached teams and focused on how do you create empowered teams, because you can't go fast if your team is pulling against you all the time. So I focused a lot on just how do you build really good teams. And when I retired, launched my podcast, and thank you for the shameless plug there, Claudio, and also had the phone ring. It's like, hey, you know what? If you're there, would you be willing to come coach? So I've been run a mastermind called the Solo Business Mastermind. Also do coaching and work with executives and get up and go to fun at least 3.5, 4 days a week now.
I like
that. That's what I do. Short story around 55 plus years of stuff.
No, very good, very good. But when you said that about teaching them how to dress and all that kind of stuff, I forgot what year it was, 2014, something like that. I was asked to speak in front of a software company. And it was really the most I had ever made for a speaking engagement. I said, sure, I'll do it. And it was to convince them to change from one thing to another. Anyway, using baseball analogies. So I'm up there, and it was at the Pittsburgh Convention Center, a lot of people, and I was all excited. And the content was good, the delivery was good, but crickets. I mean, they were like, I was speaking to cardboard, And then what broke it all up was I used a Bucky Dent reference. Bucky Dent hit a very famous home run for the Yankees in 78 against the Boston Red Sox, right?
Yeah.
So I used that reference, and somebody blurted out. They didn't say a peep all day. They said, stood up, Bucky Dent did not play for the Yankees, and he sat down. I said, yeah, he did. No, he didn't, sir. Get your facts straight, like that.
No.
So I said he played for the White Sox. He got traded. I forgot who. I said who he got traded for. He played for the Yankees. He was shortstop. And he ended up managing the Yankees. And then about 15 minutes later, after I said what I said, some guy stood up and said, yes, Bucky Dent hit 273 for the and everybody cracked up. Then it was okay. Then we all had to go to a Pirate game together, and they were all great. It was the craziest damn thing. But it worked. What were you going to say, Steve?
Well, I was going to say, was that like? By the way, I want to go back to Doland. Doland, by the way, so you've proven a very important lesson that the squeaky wheel does get the grease. So they made you the COO. By the way, I was also a software engineer. So you're speaking my language. But you know what? I'm going to tell you a funny thing, because Claudia kind of ties into your story, or a question, I should say. And Doland, kind of a funny thing was, when I worked at a little place, let's just say it was up in Maryland somewhere, wink, wink, if you know anything about it. And we had a joke that said, how can you tell an introvert from an extrovert in this 3-letter agency? And they said the introvert looks at their shoes and the extrovert looks at your shoes. And it's funny because when you said that, you're teaching them, the soft skills, if I'm teaching you to be analytical in nature, those soft skills are important, and then it's not to be taken for granted. So let's start with that, because you kind of picked that up right away. But to kind of tie into Claudia's, what were some of the ways that you got over that hump?
Oh gosh, well, for me, it's fun. That's a good question, Steve. Because one of the things in my career, when I was transitioning, making that jump from engineer to head sales guy, I was interviewing, and the guy that was my boss, who I will not mention him by name on this, he's now long retired, but he'll hear this one way or the other, actually took me outside, walked me outside of the building, and had the conversation with me, Steve, about the way I appeared. And the fact that the buttons on my shirt weren't straight up and down and in line with my zipper, my belt didn't match my shoes weren't shined. And he sent me home and said, come back. And when you look like this, you got the job.
Now, so, because I tell you what's funny you say that, because that used to be the way it was, especially in government offices.
Oh, yeah.
And they were very adamant about appearance. And what was happening was the people that, especially in tech, look, let's be honest, when you're really good at tech, you're kind of a weird person because your brain has to work a little differently. I just believe that. I think that's why I'm a little nuts. And I'm not even that good at tech, but I mean, I was a software engineer. I did a lot of techie stuff.
Sure.
But what they realized is they had to basically, if you wanted to get the best, you had to put all of that aside. In your training when you're working with these organizations, do you have to say, listen, guess what? They're going to come in with their shirt unbuttoned or untucked, and that's just what it is. I mean, how do you? It is a clash of cultures. Yes.
It is. Oh yeah. And there were times I had to have those conversations. A lot of the way back in the old Unix days, a lot of these guys, we lived on cots in their cubes, right? And I had to have that conversation both with the clients and with the team. And a lot of it, I think, Steve, was just kind of helping both sides kind of meet in the middle. It's like this is the expectation. There's going to be some give and take, and as long as we keep a solid professional demeanor, and we actually get to the outcome, this is going to be good. What I found was, a lot of the engineers really wanted to crack that code. So how do I grow, right? How do I follow in those steps? And that's when it really was a blast working with those kinds of individuals and building teams that could go do that kind of stuff.
I want to piggyback on that because you know what, and really quickly now, and Clyde, you can all yours, but that was the one thing that actually frustrated me especially when I was in the military, was I always said, for example, and I know I don't want to pigeonhole us into IT, but it's kind of important because it is one of the few career fields where you can literally rise to management positions with no management experience or training because you get so good at being in the weeds, and they just assume I'll be able to move you from here to here.
Let me ask you guys something before I ask you my question, Doland. Steve and Doland. Pat Riley, ironically, yesterday or a couple days ago, they unveiled a statue of him in Los Angeles. And one of the things he said was he wished that all NBA coaches would wear suit and ties like they used to. Now they're wearing basically warm-ups or what have you. I know as a coach, I never liked wearing a uniform. As a player, I love wearing a uniform. As a coach, I wear coaching pants with my uniform number, a pullover. I want to look good. I wear my white shoes. I want to look good. So, Steve and Doland, do you agree with that? Reggie Jackson used to call it the gig line, which you were talking about, Doland, the buttons, the zipper. Do you both agree with that your people that you work for should look a certain way? Or what do they call that on Fridays? Relax Fridays?
Casual Fridays.
Casual Friday.
Casual Friday.
What about you first, Doland? Do you like your people to become – because, again, my mom used to say, how you're dressed is how you're treated. But your thoughts on that, Doland?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Claudio, and that's what Casual Fridays. That's why God invented khakis, right? God invented khakis to fulfill that need for Casual Fridays back in the old days. But no, I agree with that. I think if you're going to show up one level above. It doesn't mean go. If you're going into an office and everybody is casual dress and then come in at least one level above where they are. Wear a sports coat and a polo shirt. Just come in look sharp.
Right.
And I think part of it is, one of the things I tell leaders, and I'll go short on this, is when you walk in a room, you got like 7 secones. And when you show up, people look at you, and we are, and particularly men, we make a quick decision, and it's sometimes less than 7 seconds. So show up, if you're going to be sharp, look sharp.
Right. Steve?
Well, I was going to say 2 parts to that. One is you don't know who's going to be in the office that day. And so you always want to kind of be prepared. But we used to say in the military, and even when I got out, you would say, dress for the job you want, not the job you have. And so I do think that, kind of to Claudio's point, I think back to some of the really good, like the Tom Landrys. You go back and those guys, they looked the
Landry,
part.
Chuck Knox,
and they acted the part, and therefore they commanded respect. I think Belichick was one of the first ones that started going with the cutoff,
I think he
sweats.
was the first.
And I think he could get away with it because you couldn't argue, the
Yeah,
results.
he had Tom Brady.
Right, exactly. Exactly. But I do think that, and again, this is where culture is changing things, because I think that, especially these younger kids today, they do not dress like that. They go in looking the ridiculous things, even in job interviews. I remember interviewing people, and they come in, and you're like, you're here for a job interview, right? And it's like, to your point, Doland, you're trying to teach them stuff at the job interview. Like, well, you don't want to tell them there's no way in hell I'm going to hire you. But by the way, the next interview you go to, maybe next time, iron your shirt.
Wear one.
Right, wear one. But so I do agree that we should dress better than we do. I think we've gotten too casual. Now, does that mean that I need to have a suit and tie on in every single thing I do? Listen, there was a time when guys did dress like that. They went to dinner, they put a coat and tie on. They went to church, they put a coat and tie on.
They showed the 60 World Series since Maz passed. Everybody had a suit and tie on at the World Series in 1960.
And why is that? And why is that a bad thing?
Yeah, it's a good thing. Yeah.
Doland, your kind of final thoughts on this?
I guess just to kind of to put a button on it. Yeah, I'm with you, Steve. I think you never know who's in the room. Right. It's kind of like when you get on an elevator, that person you've wanted to talk to for months and months may be standing in that elevator right next to you.
Steve said a word. Oh, I'm sorry. Don't go ahead.
So no, just show up. It's amazing to show up prepared. The other thing too, I think, is if you do that, you are sharper.
Right. Steve said a word: culture. Rick Pitino, about a week ago, said that when he cannot coach today the way he coached the University of Kentucky basketball champions 30 years ago. He has to coach differently. I've noticed myself that I've adjusted. I've adjusted. Vince Lombardi's ways may not work today. Number one, do you agree with that? And number two, how have you changed? Your three questions. Do you agree with that? Number two, how have you changed as a leader, if you have? And number three, why is it that we've kind of had to maybe tone it down a little bit? I mean, I'm still go at it and I still do what I have to do. I just will maybe not hear everything and see everything or remember everything.
Yeah, great. That's a good stack of questions, Claudio. I think, maybe to kind of unpack this in maybe a little different way. So I think, as a leader, and when I coach leadership, my leadership coaching, it has changed and it has evolved, because I spend most of my time starting with foundation of trust, right? Trust is required to do anything in business and life. You got to build trust, and there's a bunch of dynamics to trust. And I just start with simple rules with people kind of around that. It takes 3 to 7 interactions to build trust. It takes 3 to 6 months to build trust, and 1 interaction to break it. And I think that's a universal kind of place to start. And where you apply that, I think it depends upon the person that obviously the person I'm talking to. With today's generation coming in particularly coming into the leadership roles, guys like me, I'm not in the accumulate mode, right? I'm in the keep mode. Those younger guys, younger individuals are they're in the accumulate mode. They're now the people, the largest portion of our economy. They're the people 40, 50 stepping into the leadership roles and filling the gaps as we exit stage right. And I think they're going to be in that mode. There's some events, I think, that change things. I think one, COVID changed things, because COVID broke a lot of stuff. Not to talk about the pandemic that way, but putting everybody remote, it broke that culture. And I think we have that challenge where people are coming in and they're focused, I think, more, Claudio, on it's not as much about the money as much as it's about the lifestyle. So they're coming in the door looking for a different result than we may have, or I may have, because I'm older than both you guys, earlier and earlier in my career. So I think that's one of the things that we adjust for. And you probably see that in your coaching when you're working with your players. There's just a little different approach. I wouldn't call it a softer touch, but the same rules apply. the same kind of principles apply from a leadership perspective. It's just the manner in which you deliver them.
Right.
Now, Dylan, we're going to take a quick commercial break. But by the way, we used to have an old saying in the Navy: "It takes 10 attaboys for one shit." So you could do 10 things right, and then it's all broken because you did something buffoonerish, as we would say. I love using those old words, buffoonerish. But anyways, we're going to be right back after these commercials.
Oh, Chrissy, your Italian got so much better. Brava.
Grazie. It's because I learned the best way possible.
How so?
Well, I learned that with apps, grammar books, and even YouTube videos, I could only get so far. I had to immerse myself. I noticed I did best when I was in Italy visiting family. That's where my level really soared.
And wow, did it work?
Thanks. I became much more confident, fast. That's why I created Footsteps Through Time. It's an Italian language experience. You don't just take Italian classes, you immerse yourself in a real Italian village. With lots of fun activities and excursions, it's life-changing.
I see. So, no more boring grammar, impersonal apps, just real conversations, real culture, and delicious food, of course.
Exactly. I'm so excited about this. Learn Italian by actually becoming part of the local community for a week and living it. So if you've been dreaming of Italy and the language, check out Footsteps Through Time in Italy.com. Book now and join the experience.
Andiamo!
Thanks to Greater Pittsburgh Travel. For any of your travel needs, let Tom and the team at Greater Pittsburgh Travel know, and they'll take care of you. For more information, call 412-331-2244 or visit their website at www.greaterpittsburghtravel.com. And we want to thank the Calabria Club of Pittsburgh. If you're interested in learning more, you can find their contact information on Facebook at Calabria Club of Pittsburgh. Again, thanks Domenica and the team at the Calabria Club of Pittsburgh for your support.
Hello, everyone. My name is Claudio Relsano, and I am the author of the book, Lead from the Heart Up, Not the Neck Up, How to Create a Positive Winning Culture on the Field and in the Office. My years as a head baseball coach and a general manager of a pro baseball scouting company, I know that my leadership experiences that I've included in this book will help you become a better leader. You can get the book at ClaudioRelsano.com. Speaking of ClaudioRelsano.com, you can listen to my show, The Claudio Relsano Show, where I've interviewed such legends as Mario Andretti, Dick Vermeil, Rocky Blyer, and many, many others. And I also have an entrepreneurial program there talking about my entrepreneurial experiences. So hopefully that'll help you, and hopefully you will enjoy that. And also, Sports Corner, hosted by Ralph Williams, co-host with myself, Jim Frazier, and Luther Dupree Jr. We appear on 92.5 FM, 1250 AM, The Answer, Salem Radio, every Saturday here in Pittsburgh, 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. I hope you enjoy the show. I hope you enjoy all the shows, and I hope you enjoy my book.
We'd also like to thank Chris Gonzalez from the Knights of Columbus. If you have any questions about joining the Knights of Columbus, reach out to Chris Gonzalez at 412-605-9074. All right, welcome back. Now, Dolan, I do want to ask you something because, Claudia kind of had me thinking in the break. And, this generation is partially, it's not partially, there's a big part of this generation and the way they act, the culture, the way they dress, the way they behave. It's a result of the tone wasn't set early. Do you blame the generation in front for the generation now? And it's not that I think that it's complete, disaster, but I definitely think that, there's a lot of, I as a coach shouldn't have to, there's a limit to how much I should have to change the way I coach for the players. Now, there are certain things that this is just the way it is. And if you don't like it, you don't like it. Now, also, you got to be cognizant of, hey, it's not, 1974 anymore, so you can't quite act that way. But at the same time, there is a lot of argument that, football's gotten soft, sports have gotten weak, that competitive drive is just not there anymore. And I'm wondering, is that because the coaches and I think that goes into organizations as well. I mean, the kids come in, hey, I've been here 6 months. What do you mean I'm not the CEO already? It's like they have those expectations. And, did that generation that didn't lay the law down, is that their responsibility ultimately?
Yeah, that's such a great point, Steve. I think it's a yes and. I think it's part of that generation that didn't set that standard and hold to the standard. We've seen a lot, in the last 20 years, right? With the Me Too movement and wokeness, and there's just a lot to it. And I think through those eras, we've lost our ability to focus on the fact that competition does matter. The fact that you do need to show up and you do need to be prepared. And that ultimately in business and in life and in coaching, right? Because I grew up in sports and in coaching, somebody's got to call the ball. And it may not be the ball you want to have called. As a matter of fact, Jeff Bezos used to call, in 1997, Jeff Bezos, in his very first shareholders meeting in Amazon, talked about a committed decision. And the nature of the committed decision is that you may not be on 90% or 100% in agreement with what we're doing, but you need to commit to the decision that was made and pursue that outcome. And I think that's there tends to be a loss in that thought of, hey, this is a committed decision, we're going to move forward with it, in fear of wanting to, probably the best way to say it is wanting to please someone rather than having conflict or facing change. It's easier just to comply. And I think we've kind of slid a little too far over into that side in a lot of different ways.
Steve made a great point, but I'll say this. I think the best thing to do for a leader is, and I said this on an interview, I think a couple of days ago, Greg Norman's line of don't change people, change people. You're not going to change people. People are going to behave they want to behave.
Right.
So if they don't fit your style of leadership, your style of play, whatever it is, then they're not for you. Then they should. And that's fine. If you're not the person who, like a Michael Jordan, who would go through the wall, underneath the wall, a side of it, over top of it. And then there's some who just, whatever. Allen Iverson was a great player. He's a Hall of Famer, but he's known for what? That line, practice. We're talking about practice. Michael Jordan went through, he busted it, practice, game time, whatever. And I always liken it to, we talked earlier, and forgive me for saying so much here, but we talked earlier about how you dress. My wife, my daughter, and I were given tickets to an Alice Cooper concert years ago. We were supposed to sit in the box. So what did we do? I dressed in khakis and a polo shirt. My wife was dressed nice. My daughter, and we went there, and there was an attorney friend of mine who I gave tickets to. He came there with a shirt that, if you press the button, spit blood out. Okay, so we were not dressed properly on that. But my point is, we weren't the audience for Al. He's a legend. Alice Cooper is a legend, but he isn't my cup of tea. So as a coach, I like the players who would go through a wall and want to win and want to be coached and want to get better and want to win and upset when they lose. And that's what I want. And when you don't have that and you're motivating and trying to get them going as a leader and trying to, and if they don't respond, and I've had that, Doland, you and I have talked about that. I've had that. And so instead of, you may attempt to change them a little bit, but anymore, if you can, you don't change people, you change people.
Yeah, I like that, Claudio, because there is, and I think that's a balance, right? As a leader, whether you're within coach and in business, right? It's about the role that person plays. Talent's part of it. Talent can be taught, right? But the skills can be developed, but the desire and drive has to be innate. That's got to be something that they show up with. And when they don't show up with that drive and desire, then you can take a lot of, in my career, I've made this mistake several times, the big heart thing, where I'm going to adopt this kid and I'm going to make him my hobby. Right.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go spend time and I'm going to coach him. And, 4 months later, I have to let him go. And my team comes back to me and goes, well, we could have told you that, boss, like 6 months ago. It is that balance with being able to recognize in it. But I do think, if they're not showing up with the drive or desire, then you got to change people. You got to change them out and let them. It's not about inflicting harm. And I think leaders and coaches sometimes get a little queasy around letting people go because you think you're inflicting harm and you really kind of aren't. You're let them go be successful someplace else. Let them go find that place where they can thrive.
Well, I always tell people, for example, I'm here with Steve. Okay, let's say that I come into the studio, I start busting the equipment, I start making a mess all over the place. I go, I interview you and I cuss you out. And then Steve at the end of the show says, Claudio, you know what? You got to go. He gets rid of me. And I say, that damn Steve Mancini fired me. No, Claudio fired me. But people don't do, they want to blame somebody else. But what I try to do is I'll talk to them, and everybody gets treated differently. You treat everybody equally, but you treat them differently. But some people just anymore. And that was my question. Why do you think that things have changed so much? Now, again, Lombardi back in the 60s, or Noel in the 70s, or Landry, as Steve mentioned, or Knox. We can go over Billy Martin. Ozzie Guillen, in my opinion, one of the best play callers in baseball, is not coaching right now. Why? Because he would tell you, hey, you're not carrying the load. You're not doing what you're supposed to do. Listen to me. Your attitude sucks. They don't want him because he might disrupt I don't know what he's disrupting. You want to win. You need a leader there. But why is it that people are so sensitive? I mean, hell, I'm sensitive, but my coaches, they didn't have to get on me. They didn't have to motivate me. I wanted to win. But if I did something wrong, I wanted to know what I did wrong so I can fix it. Why is that not as prevalent anymore?
Yeah, I think part of it is, that's such a good point. Maybe almost spun off camera there for a second to reach over to my shelf, grab my copy of Lombardi Rules off my bookshelf. I think a lot of it is, we kind of went through that era of, and I call it the everybody gets a trophy era. My sons, I've raised 5 boys. We talked about this on the podcast. I raised 5 boys, and different kind of different eras for each son. And I had, one son that was all-state Marine Corps football playing dude, one that went off to do political science, and one that was an artist. And everybody finds their own path. But the thing that I noticed early in their lives was when sports would occur, and I always looked at, having grown up in sports, looked at sports as something that you win and you lose. You learn from losing. There's lessons in that, right? And it's the coach's obligation to help people understand. So what did we learn today, and what are we going to do different next time? And it was everybody gets a trophy era. And that kind of, I think that kind of pervasive thinking, I think Claudio kind of went forward from the 80s, that mid 80s kind of forward, and has gotten a little deeper in the business world and in the coaching world about, what do you mean I didn't win? What do you mean I got to compete? What do you mean this has got to fit? And that's a tough lesson. And when I coach executives, that's a lesson we have a deep conversation around is, you're going to win some and you're going to lose some. What are you going to learn that's going to change your habit or create or break a paradigm or change the way you think about something, so that you move closer to success and you can sustain that, not treat it as a one-off.
Somebody left a picture here about the quarterbacks of today, the NFL quarterbacks today. They kind of have a mountain. But anyway, it brought to mind what we're talking about. Terry Bradshaw, in my opinion, and Roger Staubach are two guys on my Mount Rushmore of quarterbacks. And both of them, when they first started out, were benched or platooned. Here in Pittsburgh, Joe Gilliam played ahead of Bradshaw. As soon as Gilliam threw a few interceptions, what Chuck Noll do? Put in Terry Bradshaw. As soon as Bradshaw threw a few interceptions, took him out, put Gilliam in. And the same with Staubach. He was interchanging plays with Craig Morton. But they didn't quit. They didn't put their head, underground. They fought and worked even harder, so their coach couldn't bench them anymore. And I know, so I don't know if you can do that to these quarterbacks today. If you bench them for even a series, they would go to the press. I was embarrassed, or whatever the hell the case is. But maybe. Again, the coach didn't bench you. You benched yourself. You weren't. And there's, I'm not going to mention any names, but there's a pretty prominent pitcher out there that he gets kind of taken out as soon as he gets in a little bit of trouble because his psyche. And there was another kid several years ago who I was interviewed about, and I said that I don't believe he's a top 5 pick. He had all the talent in the world. But long story short, whenever he threw his best pitch and the hitter hit it, man, he would sink. Then he went to college, and as soon as he gave up a few hits, man, he got yanked because they didn't want him to get too down. But you get a guy like a Goose Gossage or Nolan Ryan or any of those guys, or James Rodriguez or Jim Palmer, Tom Seaver, I can go on and on, or a Jim Rooker. I mean, he's a local guy here, Doland. Forget about the Koufaxes and the guys out your way, but forget about the Hall of Famers. You wanted that ball. You wanted the fight. Okay, you hit a home run off me. Okay, so let's see if you can do it again. But now it seems like I don't know.
Yeah, it's funny. It would They put you if you had that cocky batter, and they would brush him back. Frank
Robinson knew before the game Clemente, Willie Mays, Don Drysdale was going to hit him, or at least throw under their chin, and they didn't go fight. That was part of the game. But then the hitter said, "Okay, then I'm going to hit you back." With the hitting a home run or a double, and that's what they did.
I think that's part of that. In my mind, though, Claudio, there has to be, I think, success on the field, success as a player, success as a coach, success in business, right? There's a lot of corollaries between what you guys do in coaching and athletics, because you're leading every day. It's the same thing in business. When you're leading a team, there has to be that competitive thing. And I would remind my teams, and there were guys that I benched. Some of them would come back and some of them wouldn't. But I would have that conversation around the activity with taking them out of a role and moving them to something else. Is around, hey, look, this is your opportunity. You go figure it. Here are the things I'm going to suggest you do. You go figure them out, and you come back to me and you demonstrate that you've mastered these skills, and I'll put you back in and we'll go play. But if you don't have the desire or the drive or the inspiration to go do those things, then I can't put you back in to go play. Because at the end of the day, you're in that position as a leader to accomplish an outcome. So I'll play you where I can, but if I can't play you, I won't.
I was going to say, what's interesting is ultimately what this comes down to is this is all about accountability on both sides. One is on the coach to say, listen, I am the coach, or I am the boss, I am the manager, I am the whatever, I'm in charge, I'm the decision maker, because you know what's going to happen? If I make a decision and it fails, they're going to point the finger at me. But if you want me to give my team the pat on the back when we succeed, then I have to be given some leeway when I make decisions, because sometimes they're going to be right, sometimes they're going to be wrong. But that requires upper management then to support the leaders, just like it requires the owners of a professional team to say, no, I'm going to stand by my coach, or, whether you're in a business. Right. Now, to that point, though, I don't think you learn as much by winning as you do by losing, because if you lose and you have that personal accountability, you're going to say, why wasn't I successful? Maybe, I remember when I used to coach hockey and you pick the team and you hear this all the time when a kid doesn't make a team. Oh, it's politics. Maybe your kid just wasn't that good. Now, I'm not going to sit there and say that there's no coach out there that doesn't play favorites or have some kind of minor bias. Same with management. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I say if you're that good, someone's going to find you, and it's the same in the workplace. The irony I would tell workers today and players is you have a greater chance of being successful today if you're willing to work hard, because so many people are not willing to work hard. So all you got to do is outwork the guy next to you or gal next to you, and that shouldn't be so hard because they're probably not working very hard. So if you outwork them, you're probably going to be the success story. So, your thoughts on that.
No, it's funny you say that, going back to what you were talking about, Steve, with accountability. It is an accountability thing. That accountability is a mutual agreement, right? I'm going to be accountable, you're going to be accountable, and we're going to talk about it. And when you're one of the, when that occurs, that's your opportunity to co-create the solution, right? There's command and control where you can tell them, this is what I want you to do. And there's times as a leader inside of an organization or as a coach, you're just going to flat out tell them what to do. But there's the moment where, from an accountability perspective, you get to co-create with them the steps that they're going to take, and then what they're going to do to show you that they took those steps, how that works, right? And you're on the hook to be there when you said you were going to show up. And when you do that, it does provide that person, if they've got the desire and the drive, not motivation. I remind leaders that when you talk about motivation is, I'm going to give you something to do something. That's extrinsic. I'm going to give you that. And desire and drive and inspiration comes from deep in your gut. That's when you wake up in the morning with that burning thing. I'm gonna get up and I'm gonna go kick its butt. So, and I think in today's world, to your point, kind of the last point you made, Steve, was there are amazing opportunities out there in business today for people to go succeed and go stand out in the organization, because she's just not that hard. It just isn't. Go learn something new. Go test. Go try. Go fail. I love there's an old, speaking of, we'll go into geekdom for a second. There's an old Unix adage that says nobody learns anything by working on stuff that works. And it just
absolutely true. That's in IT. I tell you something, in the IT world, that is 1,000% true. I learned when stuff didn't work, because what was the point? If I wrote code and it worked, or if I put a command in and it worked, it was like, okay. But when you're getting some weird error, and you're like, I got to figure this out. That's when your brain is problem solving, and that's ultimately what learning is. Learning is problem solving, and having a methodology in your brain to learn how to solve problems, how to actually practice that muscle and code your brain to solve problems. And again, people just don't want to do it today.
Yeah, that's the drive for what you just said. I got to figure this out. Those words, right? That's the definition of drive. I got to go figure this out. And it's not waiting for somebody to tell you how it works and show you how it works. It's for you willing to get in there and make it worse or make it better.
Steve made a few comments that, as soon as he said them, about failing. Fran Tarkenton used to say that after a team won, after the Vikings won, they would go celebrate, they'd go to dinner, they'd have a few beers, but when they lost, everybody went home, especially him, and watched game film, and they improved. Another thing, there was my teachers, when a kid gets an A, he said, well, I got an A. But if he gets a C, the teacher gave me a C, right? And then, again, out your way, there's a great video of Tommy Lasorda in the World Series in '78. He's going to the mound to take left-handed pitcher Doug Rauh out of the game. And Doug Rauh says, Tommy, I feel good. And Lasorda says, I don't give a, you know how he was. If you feel good or not, I'm taking you out, Dougie. He says, I want to get this next guy out. He's a lefty. And Lasorda said, the last 3 hitters were lefty and they hit you. I'm taking you out. He says, I don't think it's a good move. And Lasorda said, maybe it isn't. I'll never forget this line. Maybe it isn't a good move, but I have to do what I feel is best. I'm the manager. Maybe it's not going to work, but I have to do this move because I think it's the right move right now. And I never forgot that he had the accountability and the heart and the guts to make a move like that. Whereas nowadays, it's not done. You know, the Chuck Tanners, the LaRussas, the Torreys, the Lasordas, Cito Gaston, Ozzie Guillen, I can go on and on and on. Those guys are Mike Scioscia. In my opinion, they're gone. Oh. And now it's everything. You have a kid with a crew cut making the decisions before the game even started. Okay? Before the game was started.
The old analytics.
Yeah, like Blake Snell in the World Series against the Dodgers. He was doing great, and the manager comes out and takes him out, and Snell says, Coach, no, I'm good. And then they take him out, and the owner of our scouting company knows the manager, and he called me right away. He said, Claudio, that was not his decision. That decision was made 4 hours before the game even started. Your thoughts on the way – I mean, I know you're a baseball fan. Your thoughts on the way the game – I can't stand it. I cannot stand it. I have to do my own thing. And I might be wrong, rarely, but I might be wrong. But I'm going to do things that I can sleep at night. Your thoughts on all that?
Yeah, you know, that's such a good point, Claudio, because there's a point, you know – when you stay in sports, you know, there's a point where as the coach and in leadership, you gotta walk on the field and you gotta call the ball. I would always remind my teams that, you know, it's going to be a benevolent dictatorship. I'm going to give you the illusion that you vote, and I'm going to hear what you have to say, and I'm going to take into account what you've got, what's on your mind, and I'm going to take your counsel. But at some point, I'm going to make a decision, and when I make a decision, that's my decision. And what you're hoping for is that my decisions are at least 50% of the time right. And that 50% of those pan out the way we think they're gonna. And I'm gonna do my best. But I think that's really important. And as whether you're a coach or as a leader, you got to be willing, to walk on the field and call the ball. And I thank you for bringing Tommy up. I'm a huge Tommy fan, my Dodgers. But when you're leading that team or leading for that outcome, you got to do it, and not be concerned about the unpopular choice. That's a risk, and you may not go the way you think it's going to go, but you got to do it. And when it's the right thing to do, and your gut, the three brains, right? Your brain, your heart, and your intuition are all in alignment. You got to act. If you don't act, it's shame on you.
2003 winter meetings. First of all, I met his daughter. She's at the Italian Hall of Fame banquet. Great girl. Uh-huh. But 2003 New Orleans baseball winter meetings. There's Tommy Lasorda. So I was introduced to him. And I told him, Mr. Lasorda, my assistant coach, my old assistant coach is a huge fan of yours. And would you mind if I gave him because we were talking. He said, yeah, give Fred a call. So I called Fred up. I said, Fred, I have somebody here that wants to talk to you. Now, we used to kind of play jokes on each other here and there, but I said, sure. Fred, here. And Lasorda had that voice. Fred, my boy, this is Tommy Lasorda. You have great taste in managers. So Fred goes, you can imagine what he said. Go get out of here. He said something else, and he said, "No, this is really Tommy Lasorda." Yeah, get the. And I kind of leaned over. I said, "Fred, it really is Tommy Lasorda," and he cusses me out. And then Tommy Lasorda says, "I don't think he's a big fan of mine. Maybe you should have said it was Billy Martin." But they don't make guys. Can you imagine? Can you imagine, Doland, if a kid? No offense to anybody, but can you imagine if a kid that just graduated from a school in sports management goes to Tommy Lasorda, Billy Martin, Dick Williams, Chuck Tanner, Cito, again, all these great managers, Whitey Herzog, and says, you're going to take Steve Mancini out in the 5th, you're going to put Doland White in the 6th and the 7th, and then Claudio's going to close. Can you imagine the eruption that those guys would have had? And I agree with them. I've made some decisions that maybe at the end of the game didn't work, but they were the right decisions at the time. And maybe it didn't work. Like Terry Collins, when he left, I always forget his name, the pitcher, starting pitcher for the Mets, the Dark Knight in the playoffs. He goes out there, and the guy said, Coach, I can get this guy out. And he looked him dead in the eye, and he said, I can get this guy out. And you can read Collins' list. Are you sure? Yes, I want this guy. Collins hit him on the shoulder. He said, okay. He walked back. The guy gives up a home run. But, they lost again. You know what? I'd have done the same damn thing.
Yeah. That's the thing, though. Until, it's the two steps, right? One is the tenacity and the guts, the courage to call the ball. And it takes the courage to call it. The second is to own the outcome. And you got to be prepared. If you're going to call the ball, you got to be prepared to own the outcome.
Matt Harvey was the pitcher. Matt Harvey. I just looked it up.
Oh, there you go.
Don't worry, you're on film looking. You're the on film looking.
That's okay. I forgot his name.
But, by the way, I do want to chime in on something, because you know what? Despite the outcome, I think one thing that gets lost, and this is where the impersonal nature of analytics. It doesn't know when your arm is on or not that night. It doesn't know when you've got it that night.
Great point.
But not only that, there is an intangible in real leadership. And the real leadership says, I believe in you.
Yeah.
And that player says, wow, the coach believed in me. There's no analytic that will give you that number, because you know what? You could have all the analytics in the world, and then you bring in, maybe it's the start of a new season. You said, well, according to the analytics, we're going to have this, and you bring a coach in and they can't stand them for whatever reason. Whatever it is, the reason is, and all of a sudden, now what do you do? There's an intangible there. Or there's guys that'll, like you said, they'll jump through a wall for a coach because they believe in him, and all the analytics be damned when it's time to put up or shut up. Look, we would be remiss if we didn't mention the recent Olympic outcome with the hockey gold medal game.
Oh.
Did the analytics predict that Connor Hellebuck was going to play lights out hockey. You know, I mean, you knew he was your goalie because he was the better of the two. Not that the other goalie was bad, but that analytics know that he was going to be lights out. Because I tell you what, he didn't play so well a few years back in the playoffs at the end, you know, in the NHL. So I'm going, okay, maybe he hasn't proven to me, but whatever reason, Mike Sullivan said, that's my guy. And he stood on his head, and no analytic in the world would have predicted that he was going to stand on his head like that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's such a good point because, analytics plays a part. There's a part. And the risk with analytics is leaning too far. We see that with AI, right? Now analytics has become, going to lean way over. AI tells me to do this. And it is that it's a piece of it. The other parts of that are, it's your gut intuition, your experience, your brain, the trust, accountability. It's also through all of that, asking and understanding the cost. What's the cost of the decision? What's the cost of the yes? And what's the cost of the no? What does it mean in both of those cases? And that's to your point, Steve, that's, in my mind, that's the art of leading. That's the art of coaching. It's that blend of all of those things together. Your point, the analytics didn't say they were going to win.
No, in fact, the analytics said they were the underdogs. Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah,
and if analytics knew everything, then you know what? You wouldn't have gambling. We would know the outcome. So clearly,
exactly, right?
what's the point of gambling? Now they're pretty decent on the odds, but some of it's like, I don't need an analytics to tell me. For example, when a team is 1-12 and is playing a team that's absolutely on fire, and say, they're probably going to lose. No, I know you get the upset. I get it, but like they say, that's why you play the game, because analytics cannot predict all of this.
That is, you can't do it. Especially when everybody winning now. Canada's going to go. Canada's got this.
Doland, this was a lot of fun. We could have gone on for hours with you. Again, I got to ask you both, not just you, Doland. Did you read my book yet, Steve? No, you did not. Doland, did you read my book yet?
Yeah, you know what? I've got it right here in my hand. I was going to point.
Take the coffee cup off.
If it makes you any favor, it is on my desk, and Nolan's got on his.
I don't see a coffee cup ring around it, so that's good.
No, there's no coffee cup ring. I'll tell you, I'm officially on. I'm on page 51,
okay.
And the chapter's called "Pay Them Back."
I'll tell you, I'm going to read it this weekend. I'll make you that promise. We'll talk about it next week.
Point out, Claudio, in here you talk about decisions.
Right.
There was somebody on second base. You said go for it.
Oh yeah, that was that was a classic mistake.
Not to go for it.
You have to the whole book. You have to bring that one up, right?
The failed decision of '94.
Yeah.
So there's your short answer. I'm reading your book.
All right, I appreciate it. All right, brother. Hey, it was great being on your show. It was great you being on our show. It was a lot of fun. This is one of my favorite shows that we've done, and. Steve, I told you he was going to come up big for us.
Great guest. Yeah, and Doland, I appreciate you coming on. This was actually good conversation. We usually kick you off about 10 minutes ago, but I was like, just let it go. A lot of good insight. No, a lot of good insight here, because you know what? I do think leadership is an art, just like coaching is an art. And there is, one kind of final thought, and I'll give you the final thought on this, Doland, and then we're going to kick you the hell out of here.
Right.
But there is, just like they say, there's a difference between a leader and a manager. There is a difference between a coach and a manager. There's a difference between managing the game and actually motivating your players to, again, jump through a wall for you. And I'll kind of give you the final thoughts on that, because I do think that is the intangible that it's the differentiator. I could have a good manager, but my players aren't enthused. But I could have a good coach. People are like, love this guy. I'll do anything for him.
Yeah. I'm so with you on that, Steve. You got to have both, right? That manager in the when I work inside of organizations with teams, managers I tell them three things: on time, in budget, take care of your team. You do the resourcing, you make sure they got what they need, you go. And as the leader, your job is to inspire. You're the person that helps set that path and keeps everybody focused on why we do this. Simon Sinek calls the why. What's for the sake of what? What are we showing up for? And that's where they hook into inspiration. That's where it matters. And you got to have both those. You got to have both of those people, in the leader and the manager, in your team inside of the organization to succeed. So
Don't a couple things I forgot. Real
Yeah,
quick,
yeah.
I got to say this. And when I was my first year as a head coach, I was 23. This one kid, nice kid, he comes up to me and says, "Coach, what can I do to help the team?" I told him to quit. And then another time, this other kid told me his knee was hurting. What should I do? I said limp. But thankfully, I've gotten better since then. But real quick, Doland, tell everybody where they can connect with you and listen to your podcast.
All right. The short and the easiest is you can do both. You go to one place, go to my website, and I'm really hard to find. It's just dolandwhite.com. Go there. You'll find a link to the podcast. It'll tell you where to go. There's all kinds of stuff up there. But and thanks for that, Claudio. Yeah, go visit the site. And listeners, if you hear anything you want to talk about, just give me a ping. I'm happy to get on with you and just chat.
Well, again, I really enjoyed being on your show, and we enjoyed having you on our show. Thank you, and we will definitely be in touch.
Love it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, brother.
All right.
All right, Steve, that was fun and quick.
You know, it flew by. Actually,
did.
that was a good conversation, because I think it's important, and I do, you know, as a professor here at a university, you know, it's the one thing I keep telling the kids. It's like, you got to distinguish yourself.
What
can't
sets you apart, Chris Corciani?
Exactly, and they look at you like, oh, whatever. But you know what? They need to figure it out, and hard work is in short supply these days. So.
For sure. All right. Well,
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. We hope you enjoyed the show. We appreciate you all tuning in. And as always, thank you, Mom and Pop.
Thank you for listening to Talking Business and Life with Claudio Relsano and Steve Mancini. Tune in next week for more impactful business and life experiences with Claudio and Steve.